Greetings. Our topic for today is communication. In this discussion, we're going to look at some definitions of communication, the common thrusts in all these definitions. We're going to look at some functions of communication and draw the curtain down with some types of effects in communication. So let's get right into the definitions. Definition number one is from Claude Shannon, who says that communication is one mind affecting another. So it has to do with the human mind, how to process communication on information. Theodorson say that communication is a transmission of information, ideas, attitudes, or emotion from one person or group to another or others, primarily through symbols. So it has to do with sharing or transmitting information. Leland Brown says communication is the transmission or interchange of facts, ideas, feeling, or cause of action. Of course, transmission, interchange mean the same thing. Then Wilbur Schramm says the mechanism through which human relations exist and develop goes into mechanism, kind of machine. And then Lewis Allen says communication is the sum of all the things one person does when he wants to create understanding in the mind of another. It is a bridge of meaning. It involves a systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. So we can take note of the words telling, of listening, understanding, the system, a sum of all the things we do. So there are many definitions of communication, but even within this definition, we have a common thrust, which are these. Let's look at it. Some of the thrusts in the definitions we've seen so far, and many other definitions out there. The thrust, number one, is the world without communication is unthinkable. It's impossible to imagine a world without communication. So communication is very vital. Number two is that communication is a complex process. It's not a simple thing. It is more complex than we can think or imagine. Number three, communication is essential for human relationship and progress. So, can you imagine a world without communication, without human relationship? It's imaginable. Then, the human mind, body, and physical conditions are vital components of communication. Our mind, the environment, the body, everything counts when it comes to communication. And for communication, as the number five says, a common symbol system is essential for communication to take place. So these are the common thrusts in all the definitions of communication. Now we're going to move on to see the functions of communication. What is the importance of communication? Number one, education, where we have the transfer of knowledge for the progress of society. For example, what we are doing now, this video, is education. We learn, we teach for the progress of society. Another one is what? Information. We get informed through communication, which is to find and explain something new. And one of the ways we get informed is through the news media. Another one could also be what? Cultural promotion or cultural transmission. Culture, the way a people live, is transferred through communication. So you can tell that this is the way this particular group of people behave. This is the way they celebrate their weddings, the way they mourn their dead. All these ones are carried from generation to generation by means of communication. And then social contact, yes, to help enjoy companionship. We do that through communication. And integration, which overlaps with social contact, create harmonious relationship among various social groups like political parties, conferences, meetings, or even classrooms. Integration. We also get to stimulation from communication, which is to create interest and develop positive thinking behavior, such as an advertisement. If you watch advertisement on telly, you could get stimulated to even buy a product that you don't even like initially. So that's a part of communication. Communication can also have the function of counseling, which is to alleviate anxiety and lead to better ways. So people could be anxious of many problems, but they can be counseled, encouraged to face life head on and to overcome their challenges. How do we achieve that? Communication. Communication can also function as expression of emotions. So if you see somebody shedding tears, weeping, or someone crying, or smiling, laughing, these are ways to express emotions. And of course, that is through communication. If somebody see you laughing, it's likely that you are very happy. Something is funny. So that person is communicating. And also we communicate, the function of communication can be entertainment, to entertain people, make them happy. So to help pass time and enjoy life, as in drama, song, movies, you can think of them. And then control function, which is to get someone to behave in an appropriate way, like censorship or punishment, or even encourage people. All these are the functions of communication. So it's actually, Jed, if you look at the thrusts in the definitions, it's just impossible to live in a world without communication. Communication plays a vital role in our very existence. Now that is the case, we're going to move on to see some of the elements of communication. And most of these elements are self-explanatory. You can just tell by the term that this is what it means. So number one element is the sender, which is self-explanatory. The sender is the idea generating component of in communication process. In human communication, the sender may be a person or persons who create or formulate the message to be sent to the receiver. So take note. In human communication, it means that communication can happen between non-humans, like even computers. So yes, originally, of course, it has to do with humans, but animals, computers, all communicate, technically speaking. So the sender is the source of the information, self-explanatory. Then the message, as you can tell, the message is the message. The message is any verbal or non-verbal method that produces meaning in the mind of the receiver. So message can be verbal, it can be non-verbal. It is not only verbal. That's why a smile without a word means a lot. If you enter into an interview room and the chairman of the interview looks you in the face and smiles, that's communication. You calm down. The same interview room, the chairman looks at you and frowns. You get frightened, you become nervous. That's communication. So the message could be verbal or non-verbal. And then the channel, also self-explanatory. The channel means medium by which sender transmits the message to the receiver, the medium. It could be through video, it could be audio, it could be just anything else. Then our five senses, namely hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing, are basic natural channels of human communication. So communication can be classified on the basis of the five basic human natural channels: hear, smell, touch, whatever. So we have tactile communication, which is communication by touch. So sometimes you can touch your child and calm the child down. One of the ways we communicate to even encourage people is to hold their hand, show affection. So tactile communication. We also have olfactory communication, which is communication by smell. So somebody welcomes you in his room and then you have the place it smells sweet, smells good. You're welcome, aren't you? And then we have audio communication, which is communication through sound waves. As we can see, one of the mediums to which you get this video is through sound waves. And then we have visual communication, communication through visual elements or properties such as this. You can see the PowerPoint, you can see me, video, and you can also hear me through the audio communication or into one compartment. So yes, we have all these forms of the basic natural senses to receive communication. Then we have the receiver, also easy to understand. Idea receiving end in communication process is called receiver. A person or thing may be at the receiving end. It could be a human being, it could be a thing. The receiver's role is as important as the sender's role. As in the case of the sender, receiver has also three roles to play. So the receiver has three specific roles to play: to receive the message, to decode the message, and also give feedback. Of course, it's easy to receive the message. To be able to understand the message, it has to be decoded. So you tell the child, stand. Once the child stands, he receives the message, he decodes what it means, and then the feedback is that he has stood up for you to see. So receiving, decoding, giving feedback, very important. Now we come to feedback, also explanatory, self-explanatory. Information or message that is fed back to the source is called feedback. If you get clapping for your singing, clapping is the feedback. Questions raised by students in a classroom for more information is another example of feedback. And if people even frown at you or shout you out, it's also feedback. When people you say something, people smile back, it's a feedback. If you crack a joke and the people laugh, that's a feedback. There are various kinds of feedback that you can tell whether you accept it or reject it. Unfortunately, communication may not take place because of noise. And noise is also a technical term in this area. It could be physical noise, as we hear, sounds from a rushing wind or the noise made from vehicles that could disrupt communication. It could also be something else. So we have noise or communication barrier is anything that distorts message, anything. So it could be the physical noise that we know, but it could be anything else. So we have the psychological noise, which could depend upon a person's psychological stature at a particular time. If the person is not so happy and the person mind wanders on something else, if you communicate, the person may not get you. So that psychological distortion can be classified as noise, technically speaking. Then we have semantic noise, which is language related problems in communication, like poor or bad grammar, complex sentence structure, rare vocabulary, or any clumsy expression that is not well understood uh, by the one to whom you speak. Then we also have contextual noise. Suppose the light goes off and this video pauses and the waves get clumsy. You cannot hear me anymore. Everything goes blank. That can also be classified as noise. And then we also have the channel noise. This video goes off. Um, the audio begins to misbehave, the sound system doesn't work well, that's a channel noise. So that's also possible. So anything that distorts communication technically is classified as noise. Common noise is noise. Any other thing that distorts communication is also noise. Now that we have said that we want to see that context is a very important phenomenon, a very important aspect of communication. Now, that is some noise out there which could distort this discussion. That's just by the way, anyway. Context is important because communication takes place in a context. At times, the context can be noticeable, other times, it is not. But things such as time, place, culture, physical and social conditions, and psychology of the participant are important in determining communication effect. So things, culture, time, everything is able to help or distort communication. Context matters. So it is also possible that somebody could say positive things about you, but the context can determine that those things are actually negative. So suppose somebody has a very bad handwriting, and a lecturer says, "This is very beautiful hand. That's the most beautiful handwriting I had ever seen, or I have ever seen." In a context where the student knows that his or her handwriting is bad, that positive statement is actually negative. But somebody could also say that's a very silly statement. The context could even make that negative statement be actually positive. Culture also determines context. So if we communicate what we want to say actually can be determined by culture. Is it acceptable in the domain in which you make the statement? If it is, well and good. If it is not, we have to make sure that whatever we say, right, do, is culturally accepted. Even time matters. So context, physical context, social context, psychological context, any other kind of context plays a major role for communication to hit the target that we wanted to hit and make meaning to our audiences or those who listen to us. So, no doubt about it, context is important, an important aspect of communication. Then, of course, we have effect. Communication has effect. So, why do we communicate becomes a question, because we want what we say, what we write to have a particular kind of effect on the target, on the receiver. So, to make some effect on the receiver is the answer. Effect is the consequence or result of communication. Every communication act makes some effect on the person or the persons to whom the communication is directed. So, what are some of these effects? So, the types of effect we have cognitive effects. So, cognitive effects, the consequences take place in the receiver's intelligence, the receiver's intellect, mind, which means that if we communicate and you learn something new and you decide to get better, get rid of some past life, then something has taken place in your mind. There is knowledge that you have acquired. So anytime that you acquire something new, you learn or you have some mental growth, there is cognitive effect taking place. So the whole sector of education is to transform, to help people learn something new to better their life. Cognitive effect is taking place all over the world. Then we have affective effects. The consequences in this case occur in the emotions of the persons. Example, compassion, love, jealousy, anger. All these ones are affective effects. So somebody communicates to you, somebody tells you something, and you get angry. The effect that has on you is affective. Somebody tells you something, you just fall in love with the person or the thing the person says, or you become jealous. Affective effect. And then we also have the behavioral effects, which affect your conduct, your behavior, the way you see things, your outlook changes. For example, you have a very positive outlook towards someone, and after listening to a story about the person, true or false, your attitude changes. You have a behavioral effect. And interestingly, that is part of human life, isn't it? What we hear affect us. So the change in the receiver's behavior or action, for example, a campaign or advertisement, you may not like a particular good or service, but you listen to advert from your favorite artist. You fall in love with that item, you go and buy it. There is a change in your behavior. So the types of effects of communication are cognitive. The effect happens in your brain, in your mind, in your intellect or intelligence. Affective, it happens in your emotions. Behavioral, there is a change of conduct or change in behavior. So far, we have seen the definition of communication. We've seen the common types of communication. We've come to see the functions of communication. We've seen the effect of communication. We've seen so far that it's just impossible to have a world without communication. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Stay tuned for other interesting ones in subsequent videos. Have a wonderful time.